Mrs. Frisbee and the Rats of Nim, Chapter 18, The Air Ducts, Part 2. Another thing to worry about, Jenner said. If we do get away, when he finds we're gone, he won't figure out how we did it, and he won't realize that we must have learned to read? Probably. And then what? What will happen when he announces that there's a group of civilized rats roaming loose, rats that can read and think and figure things out? I said, let's wait until we're free before we worry about that. But Jenner was right. It was a thing to worry about, and maybe it still is. The next day was terrible. I kept expecting to hear Dr. Schultz say, "Who took my screwdriver?" and then to hear Julie add, "My thread is missing too." That could have happened and set them to thinking, but it didn't. And that night, an hour after Julie, George, and Dr. Schultz left the laboratory, we were out of our cages and gathered, the whole group of us, before the mouse cabinet. Justin opened its doors, unlatched their cages, and the mice came out. They looked very small and frightened, but one strove bravely forward. "You are Nicodemus?" he said to me. "I am Jonathan. Thank you for taking us out with you." "We're not out yet," I said, "but you're welcome." We had no time for chatting. The light coming in the windows was turning gray. In less than an hour it would be dark, and we would need light to figure out how to open the screen at the end of the shaft. We went to the opening in the baseboard. "Justin," I said, "take the lead. Roll up the thread as you go. I'll bring in the rear. No noises. There's sure to be someone awake in the building, somewhere in the building. We don't want them to hear us." I did not want to leave the thread where it might be found. The more I thought about it, the more I felt sure Dr. Schultz would try to track us down, for quite a few reasons. Justin lifted the grid, pushed open the sliding panel, and one by one we went through. As I watched the others go ahead of me, I noticed for the first time that one of the mice was white. Then I went in myself, closing the grid behind me and pushing the panel half shut again in its normal position. With Justin leading the way, we moved through the dark passages quickly and easily. In only 15 or 20 minutes, we had reached the end of the thread. Then, as Justin had told us it would, the shaft widened. We could hear the whir of the machines, and almost immediately we saw a square of gray daylight. We had reached the end of the shaft, and there was a terrible thing happened. Justin, you will recall, had told us that the machine, the pump that pulled the air through the shaft, had switched from low speed to high speed when he had first explored through there. So, we were forewarned. The trouble was, the forewarning was no use at all. Not so far as the mice were concerned. We were approaching the lighted square of the opening when the roar began. The blast of air came like a sudden whistling gale. It took my breath and flattened my ears against my head. I closed my eyes instinctively. I was still in the rear, and when I opened my eyes, I saw one of the mice sliding past me, clawing uselessly with his small nails at the smooth metal behind him. Another followed him, and still another. As one by one they were blown backward into the dark maze of tunnels we had just left. I braced myself in the corner of the shaft and grabbed at one as he slid by. It was the white mouse. I caught him by one leg, pulled him around behind me, and held on. Another blew face on into the rat ahead of me and stopped there. It was Jonathan, who had been near the lead. But the rest were lost, 6 in all. They were simply too light. They blew away like dead leaves, and we never saw them again. In another minute the roar stopped. The rush of air slowed from a gale to a breeze, and we were able to go forward again. I said to the white mouse, "You better hold on to me. That might happen again." He looked at me in dismay. "But what about the others? 6 are lost. I've got to go back and look for them." Jonathan quickly joined them. "I'll go with you." "No," I said, "that would be useless and foolish. You have no idea which shaft they were blown into, nor even if they were even all went the same way. And you should find them. How would you find your way out again? And suppose the wind comes again, there would be 8 lost instead of 6. The wind did come again, 6 times more, while we worked with the screwdriver to pry open the screen. Each time we had to stop working and hang on. The 2 mice clung to the screen itself. Some of us braced ourselves behind them in case they should slip, and Justin, taking the thread with him as a guideline, went back to search for the other 6. He explored shaft after shaft to the end of the spool, calling softly as he went, but it was futile. To this day we don't know what became of those 6 mice. They may have found their way out eventually, or they may have died in there. We left an opening in the screen for them, just in case. The screen, it was a heavy wire, with holes about the size of an acorn. It was set in steel frame. We pried it and hammered at it with the screwdriver, but we could not move it. It was fastened on the outside. We couldn't see how. Finally, the White Mouse had an idea. "Push the screwdriver through the wire near the bottom," he said, "and pry it up." We did, and the wire bent a fraction of an inch. We did again, prying down, then left, then right. The hole in the wire grew slowly bigger until the White Mouse said, "I think that's enough." He climbed through the small opening, and by squirming and twisting he got through. Jonathan followed him, and they both fell out of sight. But in a minute Jonathan's head came back into view on the outside. "It's a sliding bolt," he said. "We're working on it." Inside we could hear the faint rasping as the two mice tugged on the bolt handle, working it back. The crack at the base of the screen widened. We pushed it open, and we were standing on the roof of Nim, free.